What is up, creators? This is Tom. Welcome back to another video. You're all probably wondering why on earth this shot looks so dreadful. Allow me to explain. I have the Canon M50, the cheapest camera that I own, set up, pointing and filming me, and I'm going to take you through the 5 steps required to take your shot from looking like this to a shot that looks like this. So guys, obviously Budget Wednesday is normally posted, well, sometimes posted on a Wednesday, but here I am on a Sunday. Like, I just wanted to release this, get this out the door, and it's definitely a very budget topic, so forgive me, but we're gonna rock it anyway, and I hope you enjoy this video. And I'm gonna be focusing for the duration on this video predominantly on video. This is sort of a way to improve the overall look and feel of your video footage coming out of pretty much any camera in existence. I literally can't deal with this audio any longer, so we're going to switch over now. Some of these steps will of course be totally applicable for the photography side of things as a camera operator, but on the whole this is a video focus about leveling up your video footage. Budget Wednesday is of course a budget series. I'm going to be using gear that I have in my room. For instance, the light that you can see over just over my shoulder here, that is because I have this equipment available to me. I shoot professional video full time, but what I will do is anything that is a little bit more expensive, I will link a budget alternative in the description if you are interested in that. As I'm sure you can tell, audio is absolutely massive in video production. Now, I know strictly speaking, this isn't a camera improvement, that's why it's at the front of the list. We're just gonna get this out of the way because the audio is like essential. People say it's 50% of the look and feel of a video, but I would argue that it's actually sometimes more important to have a really good audio source. There are lots of budget options. Right now, I have a shotgun mic going into a Tascam recorder. Again, all of this will be linked down below in the description. So I just recording my audio totally externally, and then later I will sync that up in post. Even something as simple as this is a Rode Video Micro that I believe is under about $50 and will make an enormous difference to the audio quality in your videos. If you have a camera but have not invested in some decent audio equipment, definitely make that the highest priority thing on your list. Okay guys, so now briefly we are going to talk about lighting. Now, lighting is extremely important and is really essential for you to learn basic lighting principles if you're interested in video production, because it will just help you out massively. So I have a light behind me. It is the Godox SL60W, a really good option for a big, decent light source that is not too expensive. This will run you about $150, £150 roughly in the UK, and is a really high quality light that will provide a good lighting source for video. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off these horrible overhead lights, which you can see is casting this just horrible shadow, like top down shadow on my face. So we're going to turn off all the lights in this environment now. So now, as you can see, literally the only light is just from my computer screen, literally just back here. But now we're going to take the Godox SL60W and I'm going to take the softbox off that light, and I'm going to just turn that on and show you what that looks like. All right guys, here we go. That is what this looked like. So I have the Godox SL60W off to the side of me. It is literally blinding me every time I look at it because there's an unbelievably harsh light coming from this side because I have no diffusion. If you don't know what diffusion is, that is this stuff. Like, I have a big softbox here which I can add onto the front of this light, and it will make a dramatic difference in terms of smoothing this light source and making everything feel a little bit more natural. All right guys, there we go. That is an example of one layer of diffusion on this light. As you can clearly see, what that's done is just really sort of reduce the harshness of that light. It is still looking a little harsh right now, so I'm actually going to get another layer of diffusion. We can add that on. And there we go. So that is really looking like a much nicer, more even form of lighting. You can see that I've got quite a lot of shadow on this side of my face right now. So I'm actually just going to bring this light over just a little bit. And then I could also, if I wanted to, introduce a fill light. So something to just brighten up this side of my face here. There we go. I haven't used a fill for this shot, but it's a good just example of how much difference a decent lighting source can make. And again, something like this is maybe a little bit more expensive than some of you might have been looking at, but there are cheaper alternative options for lighting, and those will be linked down below. But this is a very good budget choice for decent professional lighting. Okay guys, next one I wanted to talk to you about is white balance. So obviously right now I have my camera set to a daylight white balance, and that is because this sort of lighting source that I'm using right now is about 5200 Kelvin, which is daylight white balance. But before, when I had the original shot with the sort of indoor lighting, I looked incredibly orange, and there is a simple way to fix that, and it is through white balance. Now these are a very affordable little accessory. We have a white card, a black card, and I think a roughly 20% grey card. So what you can do is you can actually use on pretty much any camera, you can set a custom white balance. So on the M50, it's as simple as taking a photo in the environment that we are sort of using right now. I can take a photo of this grey card, and you can use that photograph as your white balance moving forward. There we go, that's now done. You won't have seen a massive difference between this shot, but you will have been very clearly be able to see the difference from going to the sort of horribly lit shot at the start with a really awful corresponding white balance to this shot where we are lit for daylight and things look much nicer and with decent skin tones. Okay guys, so now what we're going to talk about is backdrop, sort of this area behind me, and apertures as an alternative to using a backdrop. So what I'm actually going to do is set up my sort of studio background that I use here. And again, this will be linked down below in the description. It again is on the sort of budget side for the type of professional gear that it is. So I probably spent about £150 on this kit. So again, it's cheap for what this type of thing can cost, but is still an investment in your gear. So if you aren't wanting to go with this sort of quite elaborate, sizable and quite large studio backdrop, what you can think about is your own backdrop. And a really good tip that I would give you is to stop down your aperture. So shoot in an aperture with an aperture that is low. So you want your F number to be as low as possible within reason when you're shooting a shot like this. It means that the background behind you can look nice and blurred, and focus will be on you without the background detracting from that. It's also a great way to use practical light. So I'm going to grab a light here and put it on one of these shelves in my background. And because I'm using a slightly shallow depth of field, a low f2.8 on this shot, you'll get a nice sort of subtle blur on this in the background. If you don't want to invest in a studio backdrop, this is a good way to do it. There we go. If you just ignore this giant massive wire in the shot as well, you'd be wanting to somehow organize that so that it went down and out of sight. But that is a good example of shooting with a shallow depth of field and having a slightly nicer shot background behind you. Alright guys, and here we are. This is the sort of finished output with the studio background behind me. Again, you don't need to go for one of these, but personally, this is the vibe that I like to use for my YouTube channel, and they are such a nice way of sort of increasing the overall production quality of your video without really investing a ton of money in additional gear, but also not having to invest a ton of money in additional space. So as long as you have the space to actually set up this stand, really the sort of possibilities are endless for the amount of backgrounds that you can do. If you want colors, if you want to sort of have a white or gray background and then shine lights on them, you can really get very creative. And of course, I also use this with client work as well. If I'm wanting to sort of get a nice purple backdrop, I can do that using this type of setup. And there is briefly one extra thing that I want to talk about, the sort of fifth tip, which is play around with your camera settings. So for video, we want to be mainly shooting in manual camera settings and really sort of fine tuning the sort of options that you get with your camera. And I would also thoroughly recommend you to shoot in what is called a flat picture profile. So on more expensive cameras, you can choose to shoot in what's called log, and that gives you a really flat picture profile to really play around with the colors in post. On cheaper cameras like this, what I actually do is shoot in the neutral picture profile, this sort of flattest picture profile that you can, and I actually reduce the saturation and the sharpness down in that picture profile, meaning that it gives me a much more neutral look out of camera that I can grade and play around with in post to get a look that I am happy with. But guys, there we have it. That in 5 steps is a way that you can go from a shot that looks like this to a shot that looks like this. Hopefully you have found it informative and or helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section down below. I hope you're enjoying the Budget Wednesday series. I'll of course link the playlist down below in the description so you can follow along if you've missed any, and I will catch you guys next time.